I don't care what you have to do, Marcus. Fix it. The woman's voice cracked as she gripped her phone, staring at the departure board that had just shifted her flight status from delayed to cancelled. Around her, LaGuardia Airport buzzed with the chaos of a Friday evening in New York City, but all she could hear was her ex-husband's lawyer on the other end, explaining why she wouldn't make it to the custody hearing on Monday morning. If I'm not there, he wins. Do you understand? He gets Emma. Sarah Chen slumped against a pillar near Gate 23, her designer carry-on forgotten at her feet. At 34, she'd built a successful architecture firm in Manhattan, survived a toxic marriage, and fought tooth and nail for shared custody of her 8-year-old daughter. Now, because of a mechanical issue on a plane, everything she'd worked for could disappear. The next available flight wouldn't land in Seattle until Sunday night, cutting it too close. She ended the call and pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. When she opened them, she noticed the airport bar across the concourse, its amber lighting a stark contrast to the harsh fluorescence everywhere else. She never drank alone, but tonight felt like an exception worth making. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I'd love to know where my viewers are located around the world. The bar was surprisingly quiet for a Friday night. Sarah slid onto a leather stool at the far end, away from the few other stranded passengers nursing their drinks. The bartender, a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair, approached with a knowing smile. Rough night. Cancelled flight. Custody hearing. Ex-husband who'd sell his soul to win. Sarah exhaled. Whiskey sour, please. Coming right up, honey. Sarah pulled out her phone, scrolling through increasingly frantic messages from her sister in Seattle. Emma's drawing from school that afternoon, a house with 2 stick figures holding hands, labelled Me and Mommy, made her chest tighten. She'd promised Emma they'd go to the aquarium this weekend. Now she might lose much more than a weekend visit. Custody battles are hell, a voice said from 2 stools down. Sarah looked up. She hadn't noticed him before, a man in his early 40s, dark hair touched with grey at the temples, wearing an expensive charcoal suit that looked more Wall Street than stranded traveller. His eyes were intense, almost black in the dim light, and there was something about the way he held himself that suggested he was used to people listening when he spoke. "I'm sorry, were you talking to me?" Sarah asked, her guard immediately up. "I couldn't help overhearing. I apologize for the intrusion." He raised his glass, scotch, neat, in a small gesture of acknowledgement. "I'm not usually one to strike up conversations with strangers, but you look like you could use someone to tell you it gets better." "It does." Sarah studied him. Most men who approached women in airport bars had a different energy. This one felt different. Tired. Almost sad. "You've been through it?" Something like it. Different circumstances, similar pain." He stood, picking up his drink, and moved 1 stool closer, maintaining a respectful distance. "I'm Vincent, and before you worry, I'm not hitting on you. I just recognize that look, the one that says the entire world is falling apart and there's nothing you can do to stop it." Sarah. She accepted her whiskey sour from the bartender, took a sip, and felt the burn chase away some of the tightness in her throat. "My flight to Seattle was cancelled. I have a custody hearing Monday morning. My ex has better lawyers, more money, and apparently better luck." Vincent nodded slowly. "How old is your daughter?" 8. Emma, she's..." Sarah's voice caught. "She's everything." "Then you'll find a way. That's what we do when they're everything." He paused, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "I have a daughter too. Sophia. She's 12 now. Her mother and we didn't work out either." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, Two strangers united by the particular ache of loving someone you're terrified of losing. Outside the bar windows, planes took off and landed in perfect rhythm, carrying people toward reunions and new beginnings. Sarah wondered if she'd ever feel that optimistic again. What do you do, Vincent, when you're not stuck in airports, drinking expensive scotch? A shadow crossed his face. I'm an import-export, family business. It's complicated. Everything worth doing is complicated, Sarah said, surprising herself with the bitterness in her tone. Vincent laughed, a real laugh that transformed his serious face into something warmer. That's probably the most honest thing anyone's said to me in months. He checked his watch, an elegant piece that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly mortgage. I have a proposition for you, Sarah, and I know how that sounds, but hear me out. Sarah raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. I have access to a private plane. It's currently sitting at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. I was supposed to fly back to Chicago tonight, but my meeting ran long and I missed my window. He met her eyes directly. I could get you to Seattle tonight. You'd arrive by 2 a.m., plenty of time to rest before your hearing. Every alarm bell in Sarah's head went off simultaneously. You're offering to fly a complete stranger across the country on your private jet. When you put it that way, it does sound insane, Vincent admitted. But I've been where you are, desperate, running out of options, willing to do anything for your child. I'm not asking for anything in return, Sarah. Just paying forward a kindness someone once showed me when I needed it most. Sarah wanted to say no. Every reasonable part of her brain screamed that this was how true crime documentaries began. But desperation did strange things to people, and the thought of Emma's face when she didn't show up to the hearing, of her ex-husband's smug smile as the judge ruled in his favor, made her reckless. Why would you do this for a stranger? She asked quietly. Vincent was silent for a long moment, staring into his drink. Because 3 years ago, I lost custody of Sophia for 6 months. Her mother's new husband convinced a judge I was dangerous. By the time I got her back, she barely recognized me. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. He stood, leaving a $100 bill on the bar for a $20 tab. The offer stands, but I understand if you'd rather not. Sometimes the safe choice is the only choice. He started to walk away, and Sarah felt the moment slipping through her fingers. In her mind, she saw Emma's drawing, heard her daughter's voice on their last phone call, asking when Mommy was coming. She thought about Marcus and his warnings that she was too impulsive, too reckless, that she couldn't provide stability. She thought about proving him right by staying safe, missing the hearing, losing Emma. Vincent, wait. Sarah grabbed her carry-on and stood. I'm coming with you. He turned back, something like relief crossing his features. Are you sure? No, but I'm going to do it anyway. They left the bar together, walking through the airport as rain began to hammer against the massive windows. Vincent made a call in rapid Italian, arranging for a car to meet them. Sarah texted her sister, "Found a way. Details later. Tell Emma I love her." In the car, a black Mercedes with tinted windows driven by a silent man who never looked at her in the rearview mirror, Sarah finally allowed herself to wonder what she'd just agreed to. Vincent sat beside her, scrolling through his phone with the practiced efficiency of someone who ran their life through a screen. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah ventured as they crossed into New Jersey, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement. "Of course. What's your last name?" Vincent looked at her, and for a moment, something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Castellano. Vincent Castellano. The name meant nothing to Sarah, but the way he said it, like a confession and a warning rolled into one, made her realize she'd stepped into something far more complicated than a simple act of kindness. When they arrived at Teterboro, A sleek Gulfstream waited on the tarmac, its white exterior gleaming under floodlights. "Welcome to my world," Vincent said softly, helping her up the stairs. The plane's interior was stunning. Leather seats, polished wood, ambient lighting that made everything feel like a luxury hotel in the sky. A flight attendant greeted them with champagne, which Sarah declined in favor of water. Her hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline and fear mixing in her bloodstream. As they taxied toward the runway, Vincent sat across from her, his expression unreadable. "Sarah, there's something you should know about me, about my family. The business I'm in is more complicated than import-export," she finished. "I'm not naive, Vincent. Private planes, Italian phone calls, a driver who never made eye contact. You're either in the mob or you're some kind of billionaire with a strange hobby." To her surprise, Vincent smiled. "I prefer the term businessman, but yes. My family. We have interests that exist in grey areas. And before you panic and ask to get off this plane, know that I would never put you in danger. You'll get to Seattle safely, I'll fly back to Chicago, and you can forget this ever happened." The engines roared to life, and Sarah felt the plane begin to move. She should have been terrified. Everything about this situation screamed, terrible decision. But when she looked at Vincent, really looked at him, she saw something that transcended his dangerous world. She saw a father who understood exactly what she was fighting for. "I won't forget this," she said as the plane lifted off, the lights of New York falling away beneath them, "and I think you know that." Vincent nodded slowly. "Yes, I think I do." They flew through the night, suspended between two worlds, the one Sarah knew, safe and predictable, and the one she'd just entered, where a mafia boss could be the answer to a desperate mother's prayer. Outside the windows, clouds stretched endlessly, and somewhere over Pennsylvania, Sarah realized that missing her flight might have been the best thing that ever happened to her, or the most dangerous. The pilot announced their descent into Seattle just after 1:30 a.m. Sarah had dozed fitfully, her head resting against the cold window, waking every few minutes with a start. Each time, she found Vincent working on his laptop, his face illuminated by the blue glow, looking every bit the legitimate businessman he claimed to be. But she'd caught glimpses of his emails, names she recognized from news articles about organized crime, references to shipments and territories that had nothing to do with legal imports. As the wheels touched down at Boeing Field, a private airport south of the city, reality crashed back. In less than 48 hours, she'd be sitting in a courtroom, fighting for her daughter, and she'd gotten here by accepting help from a man whose last name sent a chill down her spine when she'd Googled it during a bathroom break mid-flight. Vincent Castellano wasn't just connected to the mob. He was the head of the Castellano family, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in Chicago. His father had been gunned down 5 years ago in a restaurant parking lot. His uncle was serving life in federal prison, and she'd just let him fly her across the country. "You looked me up," Vincent said as they descended the stairs onto wet tarmac. It wasn't a question. "Of course I did. I'm impulsive, not stupid. And yet you stayed on the plane." A black SUV waited for them, engine running. Vincent opened the door for her, the gesture oddly gentlemanly from a man whose Wikipedia page detailed 3 separate RICO investigations. "I keep my promises, Sarah. You'll be at your hotel in 20 minutes. Tomorrow you'll win your hearing, and then we part ways." But as Sarah looked at him in the dim light of the airport, rain falling around them like a curtain separating them from the rest of the world, she knew it wouldn't be that simple. Something had shifted during those hours in the air, an understanding that passed between two people who'd both fought wars for the ones they loved. "Thank you," she said softly. I don't know what I would have done without this. You would have found another way. That's what good mothers do." He paused, and for a moment, the mask of the hardened crime boss slipped. "When Sophia's mother tried to take her from me, I realized that all the money, all the power, none of it meant anything if I couldn't protect her. You would have moved mountains to get here. I just happened to have a plane." In the SUV, Sarah provided the address of her hotel downtown. Vincent sat beside her in silence, and the driver, another faceless man who seemed to exist only to serve, navigated through empty Seattle streets slick with rain. The city looked different at 2 a.m., almost melancholic, its famous skyline shrouded in mist. "Your hearing is at 9 a.m.? Vincent asked as they pulled up to the Four Seasons. 9:30, King County Courthouse." He nodded, pulling out his phone. His fingers moved quickly across the screen, typing something she couldn't see. "Get some sleep. You're going to be brilliant tomorrow." Sarah gathered her carry-on, suddenly reluctant to leave the safety of the vehicle, the strange bubble she and Vincent had created. Will I ever see you again?" The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither was ready to address. Vincent's dark eyes met hers, and she saw something there that made her breath catch. Not danger, but possibility. "I don't know," he said honestly. "My world and yours. They don't usually overlap for good reasons, but I hope your hearing goes well. I hope you get to take Emma to that aquarium." She didn't remember mentioning the aquarium, but then she realized she must have during one of their conversations on the plane. In the haze of exhaustion and fear, the fact that he'd remembered made something warm bloom in her chest. "Goodbye, Vincent Castellano," she said, opening the door. "Goodbye, Sarah Chen." She stood on the sidewalk, watching the SUV disappear into the rainy Seattle night, feeling like she'd just lived through a dream, or a nightmare. She wasn't sure which yet. The alarm screamed at 7 a.m., and Sarah jerked awake in the unfamiliar hotel room. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was or how she'd gotten there. Then it all came flooding back: the cancelled flight, the airport bar, Vincent's impossible offer. She grabbed her phone, half expecting to find it had all been some exhaustion-induced hallucination, but there was a text from an unknown number sent at 3:47 a.m. "Break a leg today, you've got this. V." Sarah showered quickly, dressed in the navy suit she'd packed, and tried to quiet the war drums beating in her chest. Her lawyer, Marcus Freeman, met her in the hotel lobby at 8:15, looking both relieved and exasperated. "You want to explain how you got here?" he asked, stirring his third coffee of the morning. "Last I heard, you were stranded in New York." "A friend had a private plane," Sarah said, which was technically true. "Can we focus on today?" Marcus launched into his strategy. Character witnesses, financial records, the detailed parenting plan Sarah had drafted, but she found her attention drifting to the window, wondering where Vincent was now. Back in Chicago. Or still in Seattle, watching from whatever shadows men like him inhabited. The courthouse was the imposing building downtown, all concrete and glass, designed to intimidate. Sarah's ex-husband, David Chen, stood outside with his lawyer, a shark in a three-piece suit named Patterson. David looked smug, confident. He'd always been good at confidence. "Sarah," he said coolly as she approached, "cutting it close, weren't you? I heard about your flight troubles. I'm here. That's what matters. Now for now." He smiled, the same charming smile that had fooled her for 5 years of marriage. "But we both know Emma needs stability. A mother who actually shows up on time, who doesn't put her career before her daughter." Sarah felt Marcus's hand on her arm, guiding her away before she could respond. "Don't engage. Save it for the judge." Judge Martha Brennan was a severe woman in her 60s, known for her no-nonsense approach to family law. She listened to both sides with equal skepticism, asking pointed questions that made even Patterson stumble. David played his part perfectly. The concerned father, the stable provider, the man who just wanted what was best for his daughter. Then it was Sarah's turn. Marcus presented their case methodically, her involvement in Emma's school, the bedroom she'd prepared in her apartment, the flexible work schedule she'd arranged. But Sarah could feel Judge Brennan's doubt, like a physical weight. "Ms. Chen," the judge said, removing her glasses to look directly at her, "your ex-husband has raised concerns about your impulsivity, your travel schedule, your tendency to prioritize work over family. How do you respond to that?" Sarah stood, her legs steadier than she'd expected. "Your Honor, 3 days ago, my flight was cancelled. I had every reason to give up, to accept that I wouldn't make it to this hearing on time. Instead, I found a way. Because that's what mothers do. We find ways. We don't give up on our children, no matter what obstacles appear." "And how exactly did you find a way?" Judge Brennan asked, her tone sharp. Sarah hesitated. She couldn't mention Vincent, couldn't bring his name into this courtroom. "A friend helped me, someone who understood what was at stake." David's lawyer jumped on it. "A friend with a private jet? Your Honor, this speaks to Ms. Chen's unstable lifestyle, her questionable associations. I object to the characterization," Marcus cut in. "My client's resourcefulness is exactly the kind of determination that makes her an excellent mother." Judge Brennan held up a hand. "I'll hear from Emma." Sarah's heart stopped. They'd agreed Emma wouldn't have to testify, that they'd spare her the trauma of choosing between her parents. But the judge had the final say, and now everything rested on what an 8-year-old would say under pressure. Emma entered the courtroom holding the bailiff's hand, wearing the purple dress Sarah had bought her for her last birthday. She looked tiny in the formal setting, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, her eyes searching until they found Sarah. The smile that lit up her face made Sarah's chest ache. Judge Brennan's expression softened. "Hi, Emma, I'm Judge Brennan. I just want to ask you a few questions, okay? There are no wrong answers." "Okay," Emma said in a small voice. "Who do you want to live with, sweetie? Your mom or your dad?" Sarah held her breath. Beside her, David leaned forward, his confidence finally wavering. Emma looked at her father, then at her mother. "I love my dad, but I want to live with my mom. She promised we'd go to the aquarium this weekend, and Mom always keeps her promises." It was such a simple answer, such a child's logic. But Judge Brennan nodded, making notes. "Thank you, Emma. That's very helpful." The rest of the hearing blurred together. More questions, more testimony, more legal maneuvering. But when Judge Brennan finally delivered her ruling, it was with a firmness that left no room for appeal. Custody will remain split 50-50, with Ms. Chen retaining primary physical custody. Mr. Chen will have alternating weekends and holidays. This court finds that Ms. Chen has demonstrated both commitment and stability, and that Emma's wishes should be honored given her age and maturity. Sarah felt Marcus grip her shoulder, felt the weight of the last 6 months of fighting finally lift. She'd won. Emma was staying with her. Outside the courthouse, Emma ran into her arms, and Sarah lifted her up, spinning her around despite the rain that had started to fall. "We're going to the aquarium," Emma said excitedly. "Right now." "Right now," Sarah confirmed, not caring that she was crying. David walked past without a word, his jaw tight with fury. His lawyer muttered something about appeals, but Marcus was already shaking his head. He knows he lost. He won't push it. As they walked toward Marcus's car, Sarah's phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Congratulations. I knew you'd win. Enjoy the aquarium. V." She stopped in the rain, staring at the message. He'd been watching. Somehow, Vincent had known the outcome almost immediately. The thought should have frightened her. Instead, it felt like being seen by someone who understood exactly what this moment meant. "Mom?" Emma tugged at her hand. "Who's texting you?" "Just a friend," Sarah said, pocketing her phone. "Someone who helped Mommy get here." Vincent Castellano had somehow been monitoring the courthouse, keeping tabs on her hearing. Part of her knew she should be disturbed by this. The rest of her couldn't stop wondering what it meant that he cared enough to check. That evening, after she'd tucked Emma into bed at her sister's house where they'd be staying for the weekend, Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. She stepped out onto the porch, the Seattle evening cool against her skin. "Hello? How was the aquarium?" Vincent's voice was warm, tinged with something that sounded like genuine pleasure. "You're calling me." "I'm calling you," he confirmed. "I wanted to make sure everything went well, that Emma liked the otters." Sarah laughed, despite herself. "She loved them. We spent an hour watching them play. Vincent, how did you know about the hearing? Were you there?" A pause. "I had someone keep an eye on things. I wanted to know you were okay. You had me followed. Protected." "There's a difference." His tone turned serious. "Sarah, I know this is all strange and probably frightening. My life isn't normal, but I need you to understand something. What I did for you on Friday night wasn't random. It wasn't just about being kind to a stranger." Sarah's heart was pounding. Then what was it about? It was about meeting someone who understood what it means to fight for your child. Someone who didn't see me as Vincent Castellano, the mobster. Just Vincent, a father who knows what it's like to be desperate. He exhaled slowly. "And if I'm being completely honest, it was about meeting someone I couldn't stop thinking about." The confession hung in the air between them, carried across thousands of miles of phone line. Sarah knew she should say goodbye, should thank him again, and close this chapter of her life. Vincent Castellano was dangerous. His world was violent. Getting involved with him would put everything she just fought for at risk. "I can't stop thinking about you either," she whispered. "Then don't. Not yet. Give me a chance to show you that I'm more than what you read online, more than the family name and the business." His voice softened. "Come to Chicago. Bring Emma if you want. Let me take you to dinner, somewhere public, somewhere safe. If after that you want to walk away, I'll respect it." But Sarah, I think we both felt something on that plane, something worth exploring. Every rational part of Sarah's brain screamed no. But she'd spent so long being rational, being careful, playing by rules that hadn't protected her from a failed marriage or a brutal custody battle. Maybe it was time to be impulsive again. Maybe it was time to trust the instinct that had made her get into that car at LaGuardia. "One dinner," she said. "But you have to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that if this gets complicated, if your world touches mine in a way that could hurt Emma, you'll walk away. No arguments, no trying to make it work. My daughter comes first, always. She should, and I promise." Vincent's voice carried the weight of a man who kept his promises. "Send me your schedule. I'll work around it, and Sarah, thank you for taking a chance." After she hung up, Sarah stood on the porch for a long time, watching the Seattle night, feeling like she was standing on the edge of something vast and unknowable. In the past 72 hours, she'd gone from missing a flight to meeting a mobster, to winning custody, to agreeing to dinner with a man whose father had been murdered in a gang war. Her sister found her there an hour later, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. "You okay?" Jennifer asked, handing her a cup of tea. "I have no idea," Sarah admitted, "but I think I might be about to do something really stupid or really wonderful. I honestly can't tell the difference anymore." Jennifer sat beside her, and they watched the stars together, two sisters who'd survived their own battles. "Tell me about the private plane," Jennifer said softly, so Sarah did. She told her everything. The airport bar, Vincent's offer, the flight across the country, the way he'd made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. She expected judgment. Instead, Jennifer just nodded. "Mom always said you'd either marry a banker or rob one," Jennifer said with a small smile. "I guess you're going for option 3, dating a man who makes bankers look like Boy Scouts." "I'm not dating him. It's just dinner." "Right, just dinner. With the head of a crime family." In Chicago, nothing could possibly go complicated there. But they were both laughing now, the absurdity of the situation too enormous to take seriously. Sarah thought about Vincent's promise, about the way he'd looked at her in that airport bar, about the text message he'd sent at 3:47 a.m. when he should have been asleep. Maybe she was making a terrible mistake. Or maybe she was about to discover that sometimes the right person shows up in the most unexpected way. Either way, she'd find out soon enough. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in front of her bathroom mirror in her Manhattan apartment, trying on her third outfit of the evening. Emma was at David's for the weekend, giving Sarah the freedom to fly to Chicago without complicated explanations. She'd told her daughter she had a work trip, which was technically true. She'd scheduled a meeting with a potential client to justify the journey. But the real reason was waiting for her at O'Hare International Airport with a car and a promise. Her phone buzzed. "Vincent." "Landed yet?" Sarah. "Flight board's in an hour. Getting nervous." Vincent. "Don't be. I'll be the one nervous. You have no idea how much effort I've put into making tonight perfect." She smiled despite her anxiety, grabbed her carry-on and headed for the door. On the subway to LaGuardia, the same airport where this had all started, Sarah wondered what she'd tell Emma if this went somewhere. How did you explain to an 8-year-old that the man Mommy was dating ran a criminal empire? The flight was uneventful, which gave her too much time to overthink. By the time they landed in Chicago, Sarah had convinced herself 3 times to turn around and 3 times to see it through. When she emerged into arrivals, she found Vincent immediately. He stood out from the crowd, dressed in dark jeans and a black shirt, looking more like a model than a mobster. "You came," he said, and there was genuine relief in his voice. "I came." The car ride into the city was quiet at first, both of them adjusting to being in each other's physical presence again. But then Vincent started talking about Sophia, about her school play that was coming up, about how she'd recently become obsessed with marine biology. "Must be the Italian in her. We're a maritime people." And Sarah felt herself relaxing. "Where are we going?" she asked as they crossed the Chicago River, the city lights reflecting off the water like scattered jewels. "Alinea. It's one of the best restaurants in the city. 3 Michelin stars, completely pretentious, exactly the kind of place where people won't pay attention to who's dining near them." He glanced at her, a slight smile playing at his lips. "I wanted to take you somewhere special." The restaurant was everything he'd promised, elegant without being stuffy, the kind of place where food became art. Vincent had reserved a private table in a corner, away from prying eyes. Over the course of 3 hours and 17 expertly prepared courses, they talked about everything except his business. Sarah learned that Vincent had studied architecture in college, that he'd almost pursued it as a career before his father's death had pulled him back into the family. He loved jazz, old movies, and had a secret passion for cooking that he rarely indulged. He'd been married once, briefly, to Sophia's mother, a woman who'd grown up in the same world but couldn't handle what it demanded. "She wanted out," Vincent explained, swirling wine in his glass. "She took Sophia to California, tried to build a normal life. But the truth is, you can't just leave. The family always finds you. So when she met someone legitimate, someone safe, she tried to erase me from Sophia's life. Told the courts I was dangerous. But you got her back. Eventually." It cost me everything. Favors, money, pieces of my soul. But yes, I got her back. His eyes met Sarah's across the table. I told you before, I understand what you were fighting for, because I fought the same war. Sarah reached across the table, her hand covering his. I'm glad you did. Glad you didn't give up. I'm glad you didn't either. The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Then the waiter arrived with dessert, an elaborate construction of chocolate and edible flowers, and the spell broke. But something had shifted. They'd crossed a line from strangers who'd shared a plane ride to people who were genuinely interested in each other's lives. After dinner, Vincent drove her around Chicago, showing her the city through his eyes. They stopped at the lakefront, where they walked along the dark water, the skyline behind them like a promise. Sarah learned that Vincent was on the board of 3 charities, that he funded scholarships for kids from rough neighborhoods, that he was trying to transition some of the family's businesses into legitimate enterprises. I know what I am, he said, as they stood at the edge of Lake Michigan, waves lapping at the concrete. I'm not proud of everything I've done, everything the family has done, but I'm trying to be better, for Sophia, maybe for myself too. Why are you telling me this? Sarah asked. Because I want you to know who you're getting involved with, all of it, the good, the bad, the complicated. He turned to face her, the wind catching his dark hair. Sarah, I haven't felt this way about someone in years, maybe ever, but I need you to understand that my life isn't safe. There are people who want to hurt me, who might try to hurt people I care about to get to me. If we do this, if we try to make this work, you need to know the risks. Sarah looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the scars he carried, visible and invisible. She saw the man who'd helped a desperate stranger because he understood desperation. She saw the father who'd fought hell to protect his daughter. And she saw someone who made her feel alive in a way she hadn't felt since before her marriage imploded. I'm scared, she admitted. Terrified, actually. But I'm also tired of playing it safe. Tired of letting fear make my decisions. So what do we do? Sarah stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. We take it slow. We see where this goes. And if it gets too dangerous, if Emma is ever at risk, we walk away. Deal? Deal. Vincent reached out, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. Can I kiss you? I wish you would. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, 2 people testing the waters of something that could either save them or destroy them. But then it deepened, became something urgent and real, and Sarah felt herself falling into it, into him, into the beautiful, terrible possibility of what they could become together. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. I should probably get you to your hotel before I do something stupid like ask you to stay. Probably wise, Sarah agreed, though she made no move to step away. They stood there for a long moment, wrapped up in each other, while Lake Michigan stretched out beside them, dark and infinite. Sarah thought about the custody hearing, about Emma's drawing of their house, about the life she'd built from the ashes of her marriage. She thought about Vincent's daughter, about the wars he'd fought, about the dangerous, beautiful world he inhabited. And she thought, maybe I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The next 6 months were a carefully choreographed dance between 2 worlds. Sarah flew to Chicago twice a month, always with a work excuse, always returning to Emma before her daughter could question the trips. Vincent came to New York when he could, staying in hotels, never pushing to meet Emma until Sarah was ready. They texted constantly, good morning messages and late-night conversations that stretched until dawn. Sarah learned the rhythms of Vincent's life. She learned to recognize when he was stressed about business, when to ask questions, and when to just listen. She learned about the code he lived by, the loyalty that bound him to his family, the weight of responsibility that sat on his shoulders like a physical burden. And slowly, carefully, she started to understand that Vincent Castellano was more than his last name. Vincent, in turn, learned about Sarah's life. He video-called during Emma's school performances, sent flowers for no reason except to make her smile, remembered the names of her clients, and asked about her projects. He never pushed her to explain their relationship to Emma, never demanded more than she could give. He was patient in a way that contradicted everything she'd expected from a man in his position. But there were complications. David grew suspicious of Sarah's frequent trips, hired a private investigator who turned up nothing concrete but enough to make threats. Marcus warned her repeatedly about the dangers of dating someone like Vincent, about what would happen if David ever found out, and there were nights when Sarah lay awake, wondering if she was being selfish, if she was putting Emma at risk for her own happiness. Then came December, and everything changed. Sarah was working late in her Manhattan office when Vincent called, his voice tight with something she'd never heard before. Fear. Sarah, I need you to listen carefully. There's a situation developing. Nothing that affects you directly, but I need you to be careful for the next few days. Don't go anywhere alone, keep your location sharing on, and tell me immediately if you see anything unusual. Vincent, you're scaring me. What's happening? A rival family is making moves. It's probably nothing, but I can't take chances. Not with you. He paused, and she could hear voices in the background, urgent Italian that she couldn't follow. I'm sorry. I knew this could happen, but I'd hoped. The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone, her heart pounding. She tried calling back, got voicemail, tried again. Nothing. She sat frozen for 10 minutes, then called Marcus. I need security, she said without preamble, for me and for Emma. Can you arrange it? Marcus was silent for a beat. This is about Vincent, isn't it, Sarah? What have you gotten into? Just help me, please. He did. Within an hour, there was a security guard outside her apartment building and another watching Emma's school. Marcus called every 2 hours to check on her, but there was no word from Vincent. 2 days passed, then 3. Sarah tried to maintain normalcy for Emma, taking her to school, helping with homework, pretending her world wasn't unraveling. But at night, she paced her apartment, checking news websites for reports of gang violence in Chicago, finding nothing. On the 4th day, David showed up at her office. We need to talk, he said, his face hard, about your boyfriend. Sarah felt ice slide down her spine. I don't know what you're talking about. Vincent Castellano, head of the Castellano crime family, the man you've been seeing for 6 months. He threw a manila folder on her desk. I have photographs, Sarah. You in Chicago, him in New York, dates, times, locations, everything I need to petition for full custody. Sarah opened the folder with shaking hands. There they were, pictures of her and Vincent at restaurants, walking by the lake, getting into cars. Proof of everything. You hired someone to follow me. I hired someone to protect my daughter from a mother who's dating a mobster. David leaned over her desk, his voice cold. I could take this to the judge tomorrow. End this. But I'm going to give you a choice, Sarah. End it with Castellano or lose Emma, your call. He left before she could respond, leaving the folder on her desk like a ticking bomb. Sarah sat in her office for an hour, staring at the pictures, feeling the walls close in. She thought about Emma, about the promise she'd made to Vincent that her daughter came first. She thought about the happiness she'd felt these past 6 months, about finally being seen and valued by someone who understood her. and she realized there was no choice at all. That evening, Vincent finally called. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. There was a situation. I couldn't risk communications being intercepted. Are you okay? Is Emma okay? We need to talk. Can you come to New York?" Something in her voice must have warned him. "I'll be on a plane in 2 hours." They met at a hotel near Central Park, away from prying eyes. Vincent looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. The moment he saw her face, he knew. "What happened?" he asked. Sarah told him everything, the photos, David's threat, the impossible choice. She watched his face as she spoke, saw the pain flash across his features, the resignation that came from knowing exactly how this would end. "You have to protect Emma," he said when she finished. "I understand." "Vincent, no, Sarah. You made me a promise 6 months ago. Your daughter comes first. I knew this could happen. I always knew." He took her hands, his grip gentle. "I won't lie and say this doesn't hurt. It does. More than anything has hurt in a long time, but I won't be the reason you lose your daughter." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "I don't want to lose you either. You're not losing me. I'm choosing to walk away because I love you too much to let you sacrifice Emma for me." He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. "I'll always be grateful for the time we had. For that night at the airport, for every conversation, every moment. You made me remember what it feels like to hope for something better." They held each other for a long time, two people who'd found something real in the most impossible circumstances. When they finally pulled apart, Vincent wiped the tears from her face with his thumbs. "If things were different," Sarah started. "They're not, and that's okay." He managed a sad smile. "Go home to Emma. Tell her about the aquarium again. Build the life you fought for, and Sarah, be happy. That's all I want." He kissed her one last time, soft and final, and then he was gone. Sarah sat in that hotel room for an hour after he left, feeling like she'd lost a piece of herself. But when she finally went home, Emma was waiting with a drawing she'd made at school. 2 stick figures holding hands, labeled "Me and Mommy." And Sarah knew she'd made the right choice, even if it was the choice that broke her heart.